the method is inadequate or suitable for the subclass's purposes. Because the subclass is more specialized than the superclass, it is sometimes necessary for the subclass to replace inadequate superclass methods with more suitable ones. This is known as method overriding. As an example, consider the graded activity class that we have designed before. This class has a setScore method that sets the score and has a getGrade method that returns a letter grade based on that score. But now suppose an instructor wants to curve up this score before the letter grade is determined. For example, by multiplying each student's score by a percentage. This gives an adjusted score that is used to determine the letter grade. Now to satisfy this need, we can design a new class that is called curved activity, which extends the graded activity class and has its own specialized version of the setScore method. So this method is a more specialized version of the setScore method in the superclass graded activity. So we say that the setScore method in the subclass overrides the setScore method in the superclass, as indicated in this UML diagram. Now let us have a look into the implementation of the curved activity class with a small demo program showing how to use this curved activity to curve up a row score. The implementation of the curved activity class is shown on the left hand side. As you can see, it has two data members, one for row score and one for percentage. So the class has two score values. One is the original score before applying curve up percentage. The second one is the curve up score. The original score will be saved into row score, and the curve score will be saved into the inherited score from graded activity. Look at the constructor. It saves the input parameter percent to percentage and assigns 0 to row score. Remember that row score is the original score, and the score will be the curve up score. Now the overridden method setScore, when it accepts a score as a parameter, it will first save it into row score as the original score. So now how this method assigns the curve up score to the score value inherited from the superclass. Simply we need to use the superclass setScore. To do this, we use the keyword super. So we write super.setScore, and we need to supply the new score, or we need to supply the value of a score that needs to be saved in the inherited score. Now to compute the curve up score, we multiply the original score, which is row score, by the percentage, and we supply this as input parameter to the superclass setScore, which will assign this value to the superclass score. Now if we want to know, or if we want to get the values of these two scores, to get the original score, we use the method getRowScore. And to get the value of the curve up score, we use the method getScore that is inherited from the superclass. Now if you look at the definition for the overriding method setScore, it is preceded by the annotation override. This annotation is a message to the compiler telling the compiler that if this method is not defined in the superclass, then issue a syntax error. Because sometimes by mistake, if you misspell, for example, the method, which is the overriding method, or for example, if you supply different input parameter, and when you put the annotation override, so when the compiler sees this difference, it will tell you that this method is not defined in the superclass. So this is just for guaranteeing that you define the overridden method in a subclass. We will show you an example later, is that if we don't write override and we make a small mistake, for example, instead of S in capital letter, we make it a small letter, then we will see that if you don't provide override, then the compiler will say nothing, assuming that this is just an ordinary method defined in this class. But if you write override, and if you make this mistake, then the compiler will look in the superclass, and if it does not find such method, it will issue a syntax error telling you that this overriding method is not defined in the superclass. On the right hand side is a small demo program that shows how to use this class in a program. First, it will ask the user to enter score and curve percentage, save them into score and curve percent, then create an object from curved activity that is called CE. Notice that the percentage is supplied as input parameter to the constructor, and the constructor saves it into percentage, and also assign row score to 0. So now how to assign a score and calculate the curve up score? We call the overridden method setScore. So we say ce.setScore and we supply a score. This score will be first saved into row score and then will be multiplied by percentage and assign this value after multiplication by percentage to the inherited score value by using the SuperClass setScore. Notice here, if you want to have curve up score, for example, by 20%, then the curve percent should be 1.2, because if you supply a value less than 1, then this is not curve up, it is curve down. Now to print the original score, then we call the method getRowScore, and to print the curve up score, we call the method getScore, which is inherited from the graded activity class, the SuperClass, and if we want to print the exam grade, we call the method getGrade. And this completes the implementation of the demo program. In summary, a subclass method that overrides a SuperClass method must have the same signature as the SuperClass method. To guarantee this, we proceed the definition of the method by the annotation override. Also, an object of the subclass invokes the subclass version of the method, not the SuperClass's method. As we mentioned, that the override annotation should be used just before the subclass method declaration. This causes the compiler to display an error message if the method fails to correctly override a method in the SuperClass. A subclass method can call the overridden SuperClass method using the keyword super. So here's how to call the SuperClass method. You write super followed by dot followed by the name of the SuperClass method. So there is a distinction between overloading a method and overriding a method. Let me remind you about this. Overloading is when a method has the same name as one or more other methods but with a different signature, which I mean by different input parameters. Now when a method overrides another method, however, they both have the same signature. In this example, we want to show you the difference between overriding and overloading. Have a look into this class definition. It has only two methods with the same name with different parameters. So within the class, we say that these methods are overloading methods. In the second class, which is a subclass to the first class, also it has two methods with the same name with different input parameters. Within the class, these methods are overloaded methods. But since the first method exactly appears in the SuperClass with the same name with same input parameters, so this method is an overriding method. Now to tell the compiler that this is an overriding method, we proceed the method definition with the annotation override. So that if we make a small change and it does not appear exactly in the SuperClass, even the name is not the same or the parameters are not the same, then the compiler will issue a syntax error. So when we create an object from the subclass and we call the method showValue with an integer input parameter, then it is going to call the overridden method. So the output will be when we supply 10 as input parameter, so it's going to call this method, and the printout will be subclass, the int argument was 10. And when we call showValue with double input parameter, then it is going to call the method with double input parameter, and we have only one in the subclass, which is this one, and the output will be subclass, the double argument was 1.2. Finally, when we call the method showValue with a string input parameter, then the system will call the inherited showValue method with a string input parameter, and the output will be SuperClass, the string argument was hello, and this is the output.